Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Kelly Green Hour as we are here to get you set for Week 8 in the National Football League as the Philadelphia Eagles travel to Cincinnati to face the Cincinnati Bengals in a matchup which, yes, it only happens once every 4 years, but the Eagles have a weird history with the Bengals, a couple of ties. They haven't beaten the Bengals since 2000, so we'll see if that trend continues or if the Eagles can continue the momentum as they and the Bengals are both on a 2-game winning streak. I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, what's up, bud?
Well, besides what you know about my son being sick, it's been a challenging couple days, which is why we didn't go live yesterday, but we're here and we're getting ready, and you're definitely right about the history with the Bengals. It's rather unique, and it's going to be a really good matchup this weekend, though. I think it's going to be really good, so I can't wait to dive into it.
Yeah, definitely. But as always, before we get started, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJ54. And follow Eagles Pin Pool Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Apple Podcast, anything, and at Eagles Pin Pool, and rate all the shows and follow all the shows, and let us know how we're doing. And as always, if you are following us or if you are joining us live, let us know your thoughts in the comments, your prediction, player to watch, keys to the game, and we will give that at the end of the show. So this, Connor, I think it's safe to say that the Cincinnati Bengals, while their record is 3-4, this is going to be the best team the Eagles have played all year, especially since week 1. Green Bay was the best team the Eagles have played thus far. But Cincinnati is better than their record. They are a notoriously slow starting team. In a weird scheduling flex, the Eagles and Bengals have beaten the same two teams the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, the Eagles played the Browns, the Bengals played the Giants, and then last week the Eagles played the Giants and the Bengals played the Browns. Both the Eagles and the Bengals took care of business, coming in, as I mentioned earlier, on a 2-game winning streak. What are your initial thoughts on the upcoming game in Cincinnati?
I mean, I agree with you that Cincinnati Bengals have just been known so well for their notorious slow starts. They just cannot seem to get through the first half of the season without being like at 500, and then they just crank it out the back half of the season. And being that we're right about the middle of the season, this about seems time that they're going to start really cranking it up. The offense is scary. We know they're dangerous. Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase Brown has become a very formidable running back and has been doing really good in that room, taking the job essentially from Moss, also the twin brother of Sidney Brown. So that'll be cool to watch. A fun little storyline there to watch this week.
I hope they meet up in the hole.
I hope so too. And I mean, I guess when you look at it, their defense is probably at fault for where they stand right now, because their defense ranks about in the 20th range in almost every statistical category. So they're giving up points, they're giving up yards, they're giving up touchdowns. So that just puts, the Bengals offense in a situation where they're constantly having to put points up on the board. And sometimes, as we know, with Jalen Hurts and our offense, it's hard to go pound for pound, point for point sometimes. And you sometimes especially when you're a notorious slow starting team like the Bengals and the Eagles in the first quarter, it's hard to make that full comeback and get that victory. But it does seem as though, they got the defense just like ours, did what they had to do. Like you said, we played the Browns and the Giants. They played the Browns and the Giants, and they kept in both matchups, the Eagles and the Bengals kept those teams at bay. The Bengals only allowed 7 and 14 points, and then the Eagles allowed 16 and 3. So our defenses did what they had to do, and now they get very, very intriguing matchups that are really going to put the defenses to the test.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a fun, hopefully exciting matchup. I'm hoping not a blowout, obviously. And you have two great wide receiver tandems go, and they don't face each other per se, but the battle when you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins for the Bengals, and obviously A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith for the Eagles, that's going to make for a really, really intriguing matchup. I think it's safe to say as of now, Joe Burrow is better than Jalen Hurts. So if you think about that at the quarterback position, the Bengals have the upper hand. But at running back, the Eagles have the upper hand. The offensive line, the Eagles have the upper hand. Tight end, I guess Gesicki, because Dallas Goedert's not going to be playing, will probably go to the Bengals. And then the receivers are on par. The way that A.J. Brown has been performing this year in the games that he has played, he's been outstanding. And I know Devontae Smith didn't have the numbers last week, but still, he's a star. He could take any catch across the middle. If the Eagles do go across the middle, can take it and take it to the house. So offensively speaking, both of these teams are really close. The Bengals, I think, at the quarterback position are a little bit better, and that might give them the upper hand offensively.
Yeah, that definitely could give them the upper hand offensively. I agree. Joe Burrow is definitely better than Jalen Hurts so far. I mean, I think if I'm being realistic, I think Joe Burrow's been the better quarterback comparing career to career at this point.
And they were drafted the same year, right?
I believe they were. I think
rounder,
they've both been, 5 years in the league?
Yeah, Burrow was number 1 overall. And
Jalen Hurts was the pick.
I'm pretty sure that was the same draft. That was a real, not to cut you off, that was a really good quarterback draft. Think about it. Joe Burrow, Tua, Justin Herbert. Now I know Tua, I can't believe Tua is going to start tomorrow, but that's a different story for a different day. Justin Herbert, Jalen, all the quarterbacks got new contracts. All these quarterbacks. So if you think about it, it's not like the 2004 quarterback draft, and it's not like the Elway Montana draft back in the 80s. But that 28 was it 2018? 2019. The 2019 draft was a really, really good draft when it comes to quarterbacks.
2020 NFL draft, 2019-2020 season. So yeah. I guess that makes sense. But yeah, I agree with you. And then like when you look on the flip side of the ball, like defensively, I mean, the Cincinnati Bengals definitely haven't been great in the early going. The Eagles definitely have been great in the early going either. Both teams struggling to get after the quarterback. I mean, the Bengals have 12 sacks on the year so far. And
Eagles have 13 in the last 2 games.
Yeah, exactly. So the Eagles have outdone them already in 2 games. And they, like you said, they face the same 2 teams, but they couldn't even get pressure on the quarterback against Deshaun Watson or against Daniel Jones. And then Trey Hendrickson has 7 of them. So it's an overwhelming, where the Eagles are going to have to match up.
And Trey Hendrickson is going to go up against Fred Johnson with Jordan Mailata on IR. So that's going to be a tough battle for him. Hopefully the Eagles give him help, because we saw what Brian Burns was able to do against Fred Johnson. Fortunately for the Eagles, they didn't have to throw the ball a lot. They only threw it 14 times, called up about 21 pass plays. And if Fred Johnson is going to have to block Trey Hendrickson one-on-one for 30 dropbacks, that might be a long day for Jalen Hurts. But on the flip side, when you look at the offensive line for the Bengals, Orlando Brown Jr. is out. That's their left tackle. So that could be a Brandon Graham, Nolan Smith, Josh Sweat. type of day for the Eagles up front. So both lines dealing with some injuries. The Eagles line is better. If you think about it with Lane Johnson and Landon Dickerson, and it's probably going to be Tyler Steen, I think. It is going to be Tyler Steen. Mekhi Becton is out with a concussion. So Steen will be at right guard. And he did really well last week coming in after Becton suffered the concussion. And then Juergens, we saw what he was able to do in the 55-yard run by Saquon last week, getting out in front, looking like Jason Kelsey. So I think as a group, the Eagles' offensive line is better, but it's going to be a tough battle for Fred Johnson against Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, they're definitely going to end up having to try and get some help over there. And I mean, we know that the help is probably a bit more inconsistent. Knowing, that Dallas Goedert's not there, you're rolling with Grant Calcaterra, who's not a notoriously great blocker. And then you got Jack Stoll, who's a better blocker than Calcaterra, but still neither of these guys even put together are match up with what Dallas Goedert provides. Hopefully, they'll help him out in the way of just, knocking Hendrickson off a little bit, just giving him even that second of help, because we know that Jalen Hurts is probably going to require that extra second to diagnose and get the ball out. We know that he likes to hold on to the ball. He's got one of the longest times in the pocket and holding on to the football. So it'll be really interesting to see. The good thing is it's just currently really one edge rusher, one player at all that's getting after the quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. But that's not to completely rule out Sam Hubbard, Sheldon Rankins, their linebackers. They got Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt, who are definitely respectable linebackers. It's just a team defensively that just has not put it all together. And we know based on history and the slow starts that could turn around very quickly, and it could very well start to turn around against the Eagles.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a battle both ways, I think. And if we jump over to the defensive side of the football, starting with the Eagles, we mentioned it, 13 sacks the last 2 weeks. And if this is going to be Quinyon Mitchell's toughest matchup. He has been really, really good this year. Whether it's going up against T. Higgins or whether it's going up against Jamar Chase and Cooper DeJean too, because Jamar Chase likes to go into the slot a lot. I mean, it's going to be a battle, and this is where we're going to see how much faith Vic Fangio has in these guys. Is he going to have a safety over the top? Is he going to let them play up? I think the Eagles will be able to get sacks, but the other thing, Joe Burrow gets rid of the ball, I think, third fastest in the league. I don't know if you mentioned that or not. I know you mentioned Jalen's. But Burrow is going to get rid of the football. He's not going to take hits. So if the Eagles the Eagles secondary is able to keep clamps on the receivers, whether it's for a second longer, that could allow the front four and Nakobe Dean when they blitz the linebackers to get after Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I mean, we know we've come across some guys who can get the ball out pretty quick. We've played that. Our defense doesn't always match up very well against guys who get the ball out really quickly. And our pass rush, I mean, we've been waiting for this outpouring of sacks and pressures like we've seen the last 2 weeks, but it was against teams that we had to have that way, that should have happened that way. So this is going to be a much more difficult test, and we're going to have to see that, it's not just a flash in the pan what we saw and just the competition. Do I expect to go out there and get 6.5 sacks like we've averaged over the last 2 weeks? Unlikely, because Joe Burrow is way better than Deshaun Watson, way better than Daniel Jones. He's on a completely different tier. He gets the ball out quickly, but he knows what he's doing. He knows where he's going. He throws a good ball. So it'll be really interesting to see. Like, I feel like they're going to need to start. Like, we have to see Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter start to show their presence again. We know Jalen Carter had that really good game against the Saints. Otherwise, he's had moments and flashes in games, but he still hasn't found that consistency either. Jordan Davis, I mean, he's more of a body to close some gaps, it seems, at this point, but he's doing well at it.
Week.
What?
I said Jordan Davis only played 12 plays last week.
And that too, like that was just weird. I mean, maybe it's because, they want to give more shots to Moro Jomo because he's a guy who's showing something over the last 2 games, whereas Jordan Davis maybe is only out there for specific situations. But I mean, Jordan Davis was a first round pick. You cannot have this guy all the way down to 10 to 12 snaps per game on a regular basis, because that's just not good.
Getting close to bust territory?
I mean, I would say yes. I mean, I know that this is only year 2, year 3, year 2.
Year 3.
2022 he was drafted in, so year 3.
Year 3. Yep.
But I mean, how long do you in theory give a first round pick to produce? We've seen enough from Jalen Carter to know there's something there. He's going to be really good. They just got to figure out, their edges. If you had a more intimidating edge rushers or more pressure coming off the edges, Jalen Carter wouldn't be getting double teamed and getting all the attention on the interior. But because we can't seem to get that pressure that we're looking for from Bryce Huff, from Josh Sweat on a regular basis, Jalen Carter commands and gets a lot of the attention. But Jordan Davis, we haven't really even seen flashes. He fills a hole well. Like when they're running the football, you don't often see them run through the gaps that he's near, because there's not really much of a gap to get to when Jordan Davis is pushing around some big bodies, when you got 600 pounds of body being pushed around and filling a couple gaps. But that's all. And to draft a first round guy to be a gap filler, yeah, I would say that we're starting to get into bust conversation territory at this point.
And people are comparing him to the guy that was drafted right behind him, because it was a guy at a position of need at the time, and they traded up ahead of Baltimore, thinking Baltimore was going to take Jordan Davis, and that being Kyle Hamilton, who the Eagles will see in a couple of weeks, or in a month, I should say, when the Eagles travel to Baltimore on December 1st. But that'll be a conversation for then. So things are going to get interesting, I think, needless to say, as when it comes to Jordan Davis, he's going to have to figure something out. And I think Fangio did say this week or during press conferences, just like that was kind of just who they were going up against and kind of the situations that didn't warrant him be on the field. But like you mentioned, first round pick, he should be out on the field, not for 12 plays. And if he's not in shape, this is not good for him. And you would have thought maybe getting Jalen Carter there, or having Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith and Keely Ringo and Nakobe Dean having all the Georgia boys kind of would motivate him. Doesn't seem like it's doing that right now.
No, it's definitely not doing it. And like you said, he's a first round pick. If I get situationally, if you don't think that he should be out there, but if you spend a first round pick situationally, you're getting a guy that should be out there almost 100% of plays. But we know we're never going to see that from Jordan Davis. There's stamina issues, among other things that he's been trying to work through. So the conversation will continue on. And I know that by the end of the year, it's going to come to the forefront. If his play continues the way it is, that's going to come to the forefront big time. Is what do you do about Jordan Davis? What do you do about that position? That's not to say, Moro Jomo doesn't deserve more time and shouldn't get more time. Him and Thomas Booker have done pretty well and made the most of the limited opportunities that they have. So if you have to figure out a way to give Jordan Davis 50% of snaps, and then you split the other 50% between Jomo and Booker, I'm fine with that, but he's got to be out there at least 50% of snaps. We know that there's conditioning things that could warrant, probably not going beyond 60, 70% of snaps, but we definitely need to see him out there at 50% and figure out, what do we do with this guy? Because of course, we do have the 50-year option, but you're getting into extension territory. And what do you do? Do we sign this guy to an extension or not? So that you're coming into that discussion this offseason for sure. And I mean, just based on the whole defensive line and how they've been performing this year outside of the last 2 games, there's reason to question that there's probably multiple moves that are likely going to need to be made this offseason if the play continues like it has. If we revert back to how we were in the first 3 games of the season, when we come up against tough competition, something's got to be done along that defensive line. And I know, there's that. I don't think it's going to happen because I really don't think the Raiders want to make the move. But there's that Diana Rossini had that Max Crosby offer, theoretical offer out there. I don't think you get Max Crosby without giving up 2 firsts, first of all. So that's why I don't think that deal would happen.
No, the Raiders aren't that smart. You never know.
You never know, but they know what they got and is worth. I saw like Jadeveon Clowney's going to get some attention and is likely going to be made available. Obviously,
I can't believe
as Eagles fans, we shoot for the moon. We want Myles Garrett or Max Crosby and nobody else. But
Trey Hendrickson could be a guy to watch if the Bengals have won a couple games in a row, and if they win this week, they're right in the thick of the AFC North race. But if they lose this week, they go to 3-5. He could be made available. You never know.
Yeah, you just never know. I don't see the Bengals as a team that would ever give up, especially when you're in a division where the Steelers are bound to be 9-8, and the chances there. Some teams are underperforming, not doing as well as they thought. So the back half is going to be really important. And I mean, you would as Bengals, the Bengals, you would have to make that decision fairly quickly because we're less than 2 weeks from the trade deadline. So in theory, you would have to make that decision very quickly as to, do we pack it in for this year, retool quick, and come back next year? Because you have so many pieces still in the building in Cincinnati that you wouldn't just start a full rebuild. You got to figure out, are you going to be able to keep T. Higgins around? Are you gonna give that extension? It's and then what do you do?
I think T. Higgins is gone after this year. That's me, but my fault. He may even get traded by the deadline. You never know. So I think I also think a mortal stone cold lock is the Eagles drafting the defensive end in the first round this year. Unless they trade their first round pick for a Max Crosby or Myles Garrett, they're drafting a defensive end pass rusher this year.
Absolutely.
I think it's a total lock. If anybody mocks anything else to them, they're idiots. I'm going to say that.
There's going to be somebody out there who mocks a linebacker. There's going to be somebody out there who mocks an offensive lineman. Multiple, because offensive linemen that's just the Howie way. Maybe but Lane Johnson, life after Lane Johnson, like that's constantly going to be talked about in upcoming mock drafts. Well, what about life after Lane Johnson? How you got to protect the quarterback. And we know,
man, the way Lane Johnson's playing, that dude has so much football left in him.
He's got way more than the 2 years he said. So you have to take that one with a grain of salt.
He's easily the best right tackle in football right now. I don't think has he given up any pressures this year? Like maybe a couple. It's crazy just the way he has played. And we are in it was Chip Kelly's first draft. What's this year 10, year 11 for him? It's crazy.
I know for a guy his age playing that position and some of the injuries he's had, it's crazy to watch. It's so impressive to watch Lane Johnson do his thing and continue to do that. Jeff Stoutland, we can never say enough about Jeff Stoutland and what he gets out of his players and how he gets it out of them. Because he's been the cornerstone for why some of these guys have had such long careers and decided to have long careers instead of giving it up. Because if Jeff Stoutland wasn't there, would some of these guys be going this long? It's tough to say if they actually would, because they all speak so highly of him. So it'll be.
And I'm pretty sure that it probably took a lot for Jason Kelce to retire, knowing that Stout was here. Because Stout probably
bringing Saquon Barkley in and knowing that this again, but as we say almost every year, that this could be our year and that we get in the preseason super hyped because of the moves made. Of course, some of the moves now, like Saquon Barkley, was clearly a home run. Outside of that, and then the draft picks, Cooper DeJean, Kenyon Mitchell, home runs. Outside of that, it's been fairly disappointing. CJ Gardner-Johnson's been meh.
Bryce Hall,
Zach Bond's been our best defensive player, but I mean, that shouldn't be. Or he's been one of our best defensive players, I should say. You could argue for Kenyon
That was
Mitchell.
like an under the radar move too by Howie.
very under the radar move, not when you talk. And then Bryce Huff, obviously major disappointment so far. So you sit there and it's like we got so hyped. Mekhi Becton was one that no one knew what to really fully expect.
He's actually been good when on the field.
He's been good, exactly. So hopefully he gets better and can get back on the field. But Tyler Steen did a good job last year. I mean, or last week. Tyler Steen is definitely in it to like, if Mekhi Becton's due to get a huge contract, Tyler Steen, I would trust just fine to step in.
I also wonder, I have a question. If Tyler Steen plays well this week at right guard, do they start Becton at left tackle until Mailata gets back?
You could consider it if you it depends on how Fred Johnson plays too. Like, do you have to force Mekhi Becton back really quickly? We know he's coming back from a concussion. If this works, because this is our fourth combination in 4 weeks. This brings me back a few years, when we had those like 16 or 17 different combinations in 18 weeks. It was like a record. And now here we go again. 4 different combinations in 4 weeks, which I think would make it 5 total different combinations, because the week 1 combination would have been different from the rest. So you're already at this point where you got a different combination almost every week. If this combination works, you just let it keep rolling until Jordan Mailata comes back. Like, in theory, you could. You don't want to disrupt a good thing, especially when the start of the season was so rocky for the Eagles. You don't want to disrupt something that's working, especially offensively, when at the beginning of the season we saw the offense struggle so much. But a lot of that obviously fell on Jalen Hurts and ball security and inability to put points up on the board. So I don't know if you blame the offensive line, but obviously that opens up a lot of different discussions. If Steen performs well, Fred Johnson performs well, things continue to go well along the offensive line. Well, what do you do with Becton? I think Becton, they're going to put back in no matter what, but at least you can be confident going forward, knowing, Mekhi Becton, if he's going to get a contract, if he's going to get a big contract and we have to let him walk, you can fairly confidently trust Tyler Steen. I mean, he was a front runner for it, and then out of the blue, once Becton started playing right guard, he just ran away with the job. But
Steen also got hurt, that kind of.
And Steen got hurt too, which didn't help his.
So you mentioned the name, and I'm surprised it took us almost a half an hour to say. Saquon Barkley could potentially have another big day because the Bengals' rush defense isn't that great. The way that Jalen Hurts has been playing, obviously he's been playing more of a game manager type, as a game manager type. But Saquon could be heavily leaned on once again. He also he carried the ball, 18 times last week, 17 times, 16, 17 times. He hasn't really been, while he's had a lot of yards, he hasn't really been heavily used, which is crazy. All the yards that he has, and he hasn't been hurt. And it was something he said in the offseason. He said that after a game, he could have 25, 30 carries and not feel anything just because of the type of hits that he takes. But there could be a game that he has 10, 15 carries and he feels worse just because, again, the type of hits that he takes. And he seems to be really healthy right now. And the Eagles, again, it was a 3-year contract they gave him, but in reality, it's a 2-year contract. Ride Saquon Barkley. He's besides A.J. Brown, he's the best offensive player they have. I think the best offensive players are A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley, Lane Johnson. Use that to your advantage. Absolutely.
You use and abuse him, because that the tread that is on the time, Derrick Henry is just another level. He's his own monster, but the tread that you actually get on these guys usually doesn't extend beyond a first contract. And the fact that he's been blessed with the opportunity to play behind, I would argue, the best run blocking offensive line in the NFL. I mean, you could possibly argue the Ravens because they're running all over teams too. But that is going to extend his career and give him the opportunity to make it through these next 2 seasons is playing behind a Jeff Stoutland offensive line. And yeah, you're right. They rank 27th. They're giving up the 27th, they rank 27th in attempts. So they're already giving up a boatload of attempts. Teams choose to run against them clearly. And then they rank 21st in yards and 22nd in touchdowns allowed. Like this should be a field day for Jalen Hurts' legs and Saquon Barkley's legs. And they should both see significant attempts. Obviously, we haven't had to see Jalen Hurts run like we had become accustomed to, and that's because of Saquon Barkley. That's because of, Kenny Gainwell, oddly enough, has been semi-efficient when he's been out there. He gets his chunk plays and stuff. I agree with you. Any play that isn't in garbage time for Kenneth Gainwell is a wasted play, but he's been able to do things as well. But Jalen Hurts hasn't had to use his legs as much, but this could be a team that you can use your legs against. And it'll be interesting to see, because if you can put points on the board by just marching down the field using mostly a rushing attack, that would be huge, because then you force Joe Burrow to throw the ball more. And obviously we know Joe Burrow is very good, but if you throw the ball over and over and over again, you're hopefully bound to make a few mistakes and some errors that cause turnovers. And we know how badly the Eagles need turnovers. We are one of the worst teams for forcing turnovers. We have forced 2 total turnovers.
Joe Burrow
in the NFL.
And Joe Burrow does not turn the ball over.
No, exactly. So we are dead last in turnovers. Like it's a joke. And last year we weren't very good at forcing turnovers either. It just seems like this defensive scheme does not force turnovers, does not push guys to be aggressive and force turnovers. I don't know what it is. With the defensive line, you would think like at some point we'd force some fumbles, but we cannot get fumbles. We cannot get interceptions. Although Kenyon Mitchell, you could argue, should have like 3 or 4 interceptions, maybe more. I think every game he's had at least one play that is an interceptable play that was dropped or missed by him. So, in theory, we should have more, but we don't yet. And it is so infuriating that year over year, we continue to struggle to force turnovers. And I agree with you. Like you said, Joe Burrow's, he's smart. He doesn't force the ball where he doesn't have to. He has trust in his players. He gets the ball out quick to whatever's available. He does not commit turnovers, so I don't see the turnover party starting for the Eagles, especially if you couldn't force Watson or Daniel Jones to turn the ball over to you. I don't expect Joe Burrow to start that party.
No, hopefully they can. Obviously, it make life easier on the offense. Let's talk about Jalen Hurts real quick. What do you think? I don't want to use the word what's wrong with Jalen Hurts, but like obviously last week he didn't need to throw the ball. He threw the ball 14 times because they ran all over the Giants and the game was kind of over early in probably early in the second quarter. But are you worried about Jalen Hurts at all? Because I don't want to use the word regressed, but he seems to not read the field very well.
Imagínate escuchar tu canción favorita como si fuera la primera vez. Te presentamos el totalmente nuevo y reimaginado Nissan Kicks con sonido Bose Personal Plus y bocinas en la parte superior de los asientos para crear una experiencia 360. Jamás has escuchado algo así. Reimagina tu música y tu forma de manejar. Descubre el totalmente nuevo y reimaginado Nissan Kicks en nissanusa.com. Función disponible. Bose es una marca registrada de The Bose Corporation.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Yeah. I don't even know if regression's the word. He had one really good season, and outside of that, there's constantly been... Exactly. That's the outlier. So we can't really say he regressed because regression would have to mean there was some sort of consistency to regress from. But he regressed from a career year, which in theory happens to people all the time. Shouldn't happen to your franchise quarterback. There should be more consistency. You see it with, look at Joe Burrow, for example, that there's that consistency there. You can put all your trust in him. It just feels like there's other things not working in Cincinnati that gives them the slow starts and puts them in the position that they're in. But I know that that's become the talking point. Chase Daniel went through some things. Greg Cosell on the Ross Tucker podcast went through some things, just calling out, he's got like a messy game. Like he misses a lot of easy things. And if you're not making those easy plays, like we never sit there and say Jalen Hurts gets the ball out really quick. Like we never sit there and talk about that. When teams play us, we talk about how quickly they get the ball out, how quickly they have an option. He holds
the ball third longest in the league, like you mentioned earlier.
How like they look around the field, they have their options 1, 2, 3, and they pick one and go to it. Jalen Hurts, it's like 1, 2. Think about run.
The only time he gets rid of the ball quick is if he's throwing that bomb to AJ Brown.
Yeah, when it's already like when you see, and then you see the camera pan over, and you're like, oh, I see why he's throwing the ball now, because it's either the bomb to Devontae Smith or the bomb to AJ Brown, where he sees that they clearly win right off. They're clearly option one. They win right off the line of scrimmage, and he's ready to go. That's usually when you see him get the ball out quick. But I mean, you cannot, as a franchise quarterback, the turnovers better over the last 2 weeks. Obviously, they should have been. Two defenses you played are not teams that forced a whole lot of turnovers. Shouldn't have put you in situations to force too many of those interceptable plays or turnover-worthy plays. But just having a franchise quarterback who's missing the simple things and not able to – I'm not saying we need to panic. I'm just saying lucky we got in before others did. Because if we're sitting here and we paid the Dak Prescott money, the Trevor Lawrence money, the guys got way more, or not way more, but got more than Jalen Hurts because that's where the market was going, I think we'd be having a way more different discussion. We could have worse than Jalen Hurts, but we could have much better than Jalen Hurts as well. So it feels like there's always got to be things built around for him in this offense. It feels like there's always got to be exceptions for him in this offense. And it's really kind of annoying. It's like he can't work out of a structure that he's in. And the fact that this offense has looked dumbed down, or like, it just looks the same as past offenses. It almost feels like it's the Jalen Hurts offense and you have to work with that.
I was going to say that maybe this isn't the Nick Sirianni offense. Maybe it's the Jalen Hurts offense, because we all sit here and blame Nick Sirianni because it looks the same, but the other component that's the same is the quarterback. So maybe it isn't Nick Sirianni. Maybe we've all been a little bit too hard on him and not hard enough on the quarterback. And again, I love Jalen Hurts. I love him back in Alabama. He obviously isn't the most polished passer, but he has a really good deep ball. It'd be nice to see him start using the middle of the field, just hitting the check downs, maybe getting up under center. But he's obviously not comfortable with that for some reason.
Yeah, it almost feels like he always thinks he has to make a big play, and it's almost like it gets in his head, and it's like you can take what's given to you. You can take the ugly things and let your guys do the work. That's what we're paying these guys for, is they're supposed to do the work for you, and you're supposed to just make the right decision and make the right play. And it just doesn't feel like we're getting that from Jalen Hurts. And I mean, ultimately we're in it with him for probably another 2 seasons. So it's going to continue to become a topic and a focus, but it did become, from a national media standpoint, they're starting to zero in on Jalen Hurts and his play and just missing those simple things and just not being like the general of a offense like we see from other quarterbacks. And it is frustrating because it can completely, and has taken us completely out of games, the Jalen Hurts offense.
Yeah. So maybe people can stop being so.
I don't know how Shane Steichen got what he got out of Jalen Hurts, but since then
Yeah, that doesn't. I don't
Like
get it
that
either.
doesn't. What did Shane Steichen do differently, and why over the last 2 years has no one looked back to the tape and what Shane Steichen did? Because a lot of the people this year, not so much, but last year, a lot of the people were the same people. Brian
Yeah.
Johnson took the promotion. Like Nick Sirianni was still there. What are they missing from what Shane Steichen was able to get out of Jalen Hurts?
It's a very good question. I don't know. Hopefully we see improvements. I mean, the Eagles are 4-2 right now and half a game out of first, but you have big games coming up. Better, and the defense is going to be facing better quarterbacks, but the Bengals, the Jaguars, the Cowboys, the big Thursday night matchup against Washington. You're going to be playing better quarterbacks, playing, you would think, better defenses. So definitely going to have to figure it out on both sides of the football in terms of getting turnovers. And because you're not going to be able to, probably not going to be able to win a Super Bowl throwing the ball 15 times a game.
No.
I don't know if there's two teams in the league that are going to try to do it, though. The Ravens and the Eagles are going to try. Now, but Lamar Jackson, I mean, he threw 5 touchdowns last week. Lamar Jackson is ridiculous. He's on his way to win his 3rd MVP.
Absolutely.
I thought Lamar was going to be good coming out, and people thought I was crazy. Like, he's good, and the fact that he has like Derrick Henry back there with him, so you either have to key in on Henry or you have Lamar Jackson that's going to run all over you. So that's going to make things
those numbers were wild. That was Derrick Henry for 169, and then Lamar Jackson for 281 and 5 through the air. That's crazy. And but that's the thing. Like, because like Lamar Jackson's not much bigger than Jalen Hurts either. He can use all areas of the field. Now. He is a lot faster.
And
but like from a passing standpoint, he can do things at all levels of the field. Why can't Jalen Hurts work the middle of the field? Why, like, if Lamar Jackson's able to do this, there's clear deficiencies in Jalen Hurts' game.
How tall is Lamar Jackson? He's taller than Hurts, right?
I'd have to look that up. I didn't think Lamar Jackson was much taller if he is.
Let's see.
He is. I got it in meters. He's 1.88 meters, and Jalen Hurts is 1.85 meters. So he's not that much bigger.
We don't use the metric system here.
It's 6'2" versus 6 foot, I think.
And I think it is 6'2" versus 6 foot. So I mean, that's what a lot of people are saying. It potentially could be the issue with Jalen Hurts not throwing over the middle, because you have Mekhi Becton, who's huge, Landon Dickerson, who's huge. So it's tough for him to see over the middle. I don't know if that's true, but we'll see. All right. We obviously want to get to our players of the game, keys to the game, and prediction. But first, our unheralded player of the week for week 7 in the National Football League. We don't want Lamar Jackson, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown. We don't want any of those, obviously, guys that we expect to have big games. We want somebody under the radar. Do you have somebody, Connor, for your unheralded player of the week in week 7
I do.
in the National Football League?
I do, and I think it's the last time you can really use him, because it feels like he took advantage of an injury, and he may also be starting to run away with touches and the job. Tank Bigsby.
I was going to pick
for the Jags. 26 carries, 118 yards, 2 TDs. Of course, beat up on the lowly Patriots. I mean, that is what it is. Jaguars also suck. They're terrible. I'm surprised that Doug Peterson. I mean, if they lost to the Pats, I don't know if he was coming back with a job. But they beat up on the Pats, so he comes back with a job they probably shouldn't have. But Tank Bigsby had a massive game. Now there's rumors out there that maybe the Jags might look to move on from Travis Etienne at the trade deadline. We see all the injuries that are out there in the running back market, and how cheap you can be, because I believe Travis Etienne would be due for an extension this offseason, or it's coming. Mm-hmm. And obviously the Jags are in no situation to drop money on Travis Etienne. And Tank Bigsby, I mean, he started as almost nothing on this Jags offense, and they let Etienne run away with it. But Bigsby, since Etienne went down, has had back-to-back huge games, standing out massively. So
I was going to take Tank Bigsby, so I had to Now I got to make a
Pivot.
U-turn. I'm going to go with a guy that was an Eagle last year. Let's see who do you think? You have any idea who it might be? Was an Eagle last year?
Not even.
All right. He came in for injury. Marcus Mariota was 18 of 23, 205 yards and 2 touchdowns. Again, it was against Carolina in the 40-7 victory for the Commanders over the Panthers. He replaced an injured Jaden Daniels early in the second quarter, and he looked a heck of a lot better than he looked like at all in Philly last year. That looked like the Marcus Mariota from Oregon. But yes, gotta give credit where credit's due. And Marcus Mariota is my unheralded player of the week for Week 7 in the National Football League.
I mean, you got to take advantage of those. Like, they could easily, once Daniels went down, things could have went south, and like maybe you give the Panthers a W, although the Panthers are clearly absolutely horrible and they weren't good. They were definitely not putting any more than those 7 points up on the board. But the Commander, like, especially in the NFC East, where it's always usually decided, we don't have repeat champions. It's usually decided by 1 or 2 games at the most. It usually comes down to Week 17 because Week 18 usually doesn't matter. You got to get these wins. If you lose, you got to face adversity and win. And the Commanders they're 5-2. Like, that's wild. They look like night and day from last year. And I know, like, heading into it, like, they were that team that, people were kind of like, they signed a bunch of older guys. They got Jaden Daniels, who faced a lot of question marks coming out. Well, they're definitely answering the media criticism super well. There's still lots of football to go. Like, that isn't to say that they can't end up a 9-8 team or something and not make the playoffs. But at this point, if they continue the rate they're going, they're definitely looking to be in a very good spot and maybe even taking the NFC East.
Yeah.
The way the Eagles and Cowboys have played, I mean, I know the last 2 games we've looked really good, but I mean, remember the games before that. Have we really turned the corner, or did we just beat up on who we had to beat up on?
We're going to find out in the next couple of weeks. And that game in, 3 or 4 weeks on Thursday night in Philly. Woo, that game is going to be crazy.
Suddenly, that Commanders and Cowboys, those 2 games are going to be big, big games. You can't – you really got to come out 2-0 in those 2 games. If you go 1-1, that could – when we look back in Week 16 and 17 – it could be the straw that broke the camel's back and us getting in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we'll definitely be getting into those discussions in a couple of weeks. All right. We need an offensive player, a defensive player, maybe a key or 2 before we get to predictions. Connor, go ahead. You can go first.
If I'm picking a offensive player, I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley. In this one, I mean, it seems, the obvious one, but it has to be, because when I'm picking Saquon Barkley, I'm also picking the coaching staff to put the faith in him to run the ball, rack up the yards, and hopefully put some points on the board. Because we know that if we get down a score, maybe 2 scores, and they start forcing Jalen Hurts to throw the ball and abandon the run, that's where mistakes happen. That's where games are lost. So we need to be able to lean in on Saquon Barkley, and Saquon Barkley needs to make sure he continues to give this coach and staff every reason to give him the ball on first down, give him the ball even on second down. Try not to even allow us to have to consider throwing the ball. And against his defense, he definitely should be able to do this. He definitely should be able to go for 100 yards plus and a couple touchdowns again. It should be very, very similar to last week, as long as the coaching staff puts the faith in him and doesn't abandon the run just because, I think this game's going to be high scoring. I do. As a preface to my prediction, I think this is going to be a shootout between 2 offenses, but it could easily go south if they abandon the run, because I think Barkley can put a bunch of those points on the board, and I think Hurts can put at least 1 on the board with his own legs as well. So Saquon Barkley on offense for me. Defensively, I'm going to go with Jalen Carter. I mean, we need to see a little more Jalen Carter again. I mean, he had that big game, and then he shows flashes here and there. He needs to take over another game. He needs to dominate another game. He needs to help this defensive line. This is going to be a true test. Have we really turned a corner? If we can put up 2 or 3 sacks, I'll say, okay, I'll start to have a bit more confidence. If we regress back to 0 or 1 sack, then here we go again. And the discussion starts all over again of the need. I mean, it's clear there's still a need at edge rush no matter what. If we go for 5 sacks again this game, I'm not going to say we've figured it out and there's no need at edge rush. We haven't forgotten those first few weeks. But we need Jalen Carter. Another Jalen Carter game. Dominate, take over. The Bengals offense is good. If you get it, and they don't need a whole lot of time, but Jalen Carter needs to wreak some havoc in there and just force some attention off the edge so that they can get after Joe Burrow and make the day a little tougher. He gets the ball out quick, so Jalen Carter has to be quick off the ball, and he has to do what he did in that Saints game. He was all over the place. He was dominant. He was helping he helped the defense as a whole because he was that much better. He can be a game changer, and he needs to be a game changer in this game and start to show some consistency and being that game changer.
Good choices. Offensively, I'm going Devontae Smith. He had 1 catch, -2 yards last week. I think that I don't want to say they're going to force him the football, but I think that the Bengals might, obviously they're going to want to key in on Saquon, and they're probably not going to want AJ to beat him. Devontae. I mean, his matchup against whether it's Mike Hilton, DJ Turner, I think Cam Taylor-Britt is going to probably be on AJ Brown most of the time. I think Devontae, they're going to want to try to get the ball to Devontae. Remember, was it last year or 2 years ago, the Detroit game, the first game of the year, 0 catches, 0 yards. And then the next game he had over 100. So it wouldn't shock me if the Eagles come out and try to get him the football early just to get him into a groove and maybe help Jalen get into grooves.
They're not a great passing defense either. This defense as a whole, and maybe it's just a slow
start. They've been playing
thing.
Better though.
They've been playing better, exactly. They've gotten a bit better. Of course, it was against the Giants and the Browns, and you look at before that. I mean, the Ravens put up 41. They allowed the Panthers to put up 24. The Commanders obviously put up 33. The Chiefs 26. So, I mean, they got better against teams they had to get better against. But this is also a team that, despite ranking 20th or worse in yards and touchdowns allowed through the air, they have forced 6 interceptions and do rank 11th in that category. So, and that gets me worried because Jalen Hurts, we know his propensity to turn the ball over, and he's just been able to get comfortable these last 2 weeks against not so great competition. But this is a defense that can force turnovers, and that scares me with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah. So I went Devontae on defense. I'm going to go, and I think I picked him last week. I'm going to pick him again. Quinyon Mitchell. Actually, no, changing up. I'm going to go Josh Sweat because Josh Sweat's going to go up against whoever is playing left tackle for the
Orlando Brown or Cody Ford.
Yeah, I think Orlando Brown is hurt. I could be wrong.
He was a full participant in their last practice, so I don't think he's going to miss.
Okay.
So he should be playing.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens, but I'm going to go with Josh Sweat. He's had a couple of sacks over the last couple of weeks, and we'll see how he does against the banged up or maybe a hobbled Orlando Brown Jr. T. Higgins is questionable, so that should be an interesting. I'm sure he's going to play, but whoever he's up against, maybe it won't be 100% T. Higgins. But T. Higgins' first 2 career touchdown passes or catches. Do you know who they were against? The Eagles in 2020.
I was going to say, must be the Eagles. Has to be.
He had 2 touchdown catches in 2020 when the Bengals were in Philly, and he didn't get the full Philly experience because it was COVID year. But so hopefully Quinyon and Darius Slay, who's actually a big play Slay, who he might not be having the turnovers. He's actually been really solid for the Eagles, and maybe he really was hurt last year. He's been really good. So I'm gonna go Devontae Smith and Josh sweat. Prediction time, Connor.
The secondary as a whole has been really good.
Ever since they inserted
surprise.
Cooper DeJean for Avonte Maddox.
Exactly. They've been a pleasant surprise, which is good. And we want to know that we're in good hands when Darius Slay, when his time comes. And then you just have to worry about your CB2. You're not worried about a CB1 anymore. You know Kenyon Mitchell's going to step into that role. Now what do you do, this offseason, or is it in-house? Is Keely Ringo the answer? Is he in-house?
Yeah,
Maybe
we'll see.
Isaiah Rodgers. I mean, he clearly lost out because Kenyon Mitchell grabbed opportunity by the horns, and Rodgers, another person who had an early season injury, late preseason injury, early season injury that cost him one game. And it showed. One game was all it took for him to lose that job. So maybe
you usually don't lose a potential starting spot to injury, but don't get hurt. One thing we've learned, Vic Fangio don't care. He does not care.
Especially when there's rookies breathing down your neck, don't give them a chance, because sometimes that's all it takes.
Exactly.
A prediction.
All right. Hold on. So I'm 4-2. You're 2-4 in our prediction so far on Eagles games coming into this week. Who you got?
Yeah, so don't take my predictions.
I have mine written down already.
Like I alluded to, I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I do think the Eagles are still going to put up points in this matchup, whether it be on the ground or through the air. I do think that the Bengals are going to win this. I have the Bengals over the Birds, and my score is 38-31.
Wow, that is high scoring.
I'm really high. I feel like I'm too high. But then again, if I ended up saying I think this is going to be a defensive war, then they end up pumping out the 30 and the 30. So
trying to play a little what the heck am I trying to think? Oh, whatever.
Pound for pound, though, like if it comes down to Burrow and Hurts and having to go point for point, Burrow. I just have not been able to put my trust. His magic in fourth quarter comebacks, they just don't happen with Jalen Hurts. So we need to get out there an early start. This first quarter jinx has got to stop. Like it's got to stop this week, because if you put Jalen Hurts behind by a score too early against this Bengals offense, I mean, you might be able to write the game off just that quickly.
Yeah. So hopefully, one thing is hopefully the Eagles can keep the ball from being turned over offensively. My prediction, I also have the Bengals winning 27-24. A little lower scoring than you have it, but hopefully by us both picking the Bengals, that means the Eagles win. I will be happy to come in here on Monday, or when we do our show on Monday, and the Eagles have a victory and they're 5-2. So I do want to ask you one thing before we, one of the dumbest reporters in Philly said that this would be an acceptable loss for the Eagles. Is there such thing as an acceptable loss?
I don't think so. There should never be an
Smart
acceptable
people
loss,
think so.
Especially the way that like the Commanders are playing and stuff. You don't take losses and just accept that losses will happen.
Yep.
We know realistically, yes, they're going to happen. No teams go 17-0, or very few. But I mean, you had your acceptable losses already with the rough start to the season that we had. But I will never say a loss is acceptable. Is this a tough game? Is this a game that could be lost?
Yeah.
You can word it differently and make it make sense, but no, there's no acceptable loss.
Yeah, I think so. I just wanted to get your opinion on that. Thank you all for tuning into the Kelly Green Hour as the Philadelphia Eagles are set to do battle with the Cincinnati Bengals. We will be back Monday with our review of the game. And hopefully we're having our third consecutive victory, Green Hour. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHurl54. Follow Eagles Pin Pool Network at Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and all the streaming or spots at Eagles Pin Pool. For Connor, I'm LJ. Thank you for tuning in to the Kelly Green Hour.
Fly, Eagles, fly.